The gunshot wound in Sarah Whitmore's leg turned septic on a Tuesday afternoon in August of 1878, and by Wednesday morning, the fever had her speaking in tongues she did not know while her sister Rachel held cold compresses to her burning forehead. Rachel stood at the window of their small homestead outside Dry Creek, Texas, watching the horizon blur with heat and dust. Their father had been dead 3 years, their mother 5. And now Sarah lay dying in the same bed where both parents had taken their last breaths. The wound itself had been an accident, a ricochet from Rachel's own rifle when she had tried to scare off a coyote threatening their chickens 2 weeks prior. The guilt sat in Rachel's stomach like a stone, heavy and immovable. She had cleaned the wound daily, changed the bandages, done everything the traveling doctor had told them when he had passed through 6 months ago. But it was not enough. The red streaks climbing up Sarah's thigh told a story Rachel did not want to read, and the fever that made her sister's skin feel like a cookstove spoke of time running out. "I need to go to town," Rachel said aloud, though Sarah could not hear her through the delirium. "I need to find help." But Dry Creek was 12 miles south, and the real doctor, the one who might have medicine strong enough to fight the infection, was in Abilene, 30 miles north through some of the most unforgiving country in West Texas. Rachel had no horse fast enough to make that journey there and back before Sarah's body gave up its fight. Their old mare, Bessie, was 20 years old if she was a day, and the mule was lame. Rachel felt panic rising in her chest like floodwater, threatening to drown her ability to think clearly. She was preparing to saddle Bessie anyway, preparing to try the impossible, when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching the house. Rachel grabbed her rifle, the same one that had caused all this trouble, and moved to the door. Visitors were rare out here, and fewer still were friendly. Through the gap in the door, she saw a single rider approaching, leading a pack horse behind him. He sat tall in the saddle, his hat pulled low against the sun, and even from a distance, Rachel could see the easy confidence of a man who had spent more time on horseback than on his own 2 feet. The rider stopped a respectful distance from the house. "Hello, the house," he called out, his voice carrying across the dusty yard. "Name is Cole Brennan. I am looking for the Whitmore place." Rachel stepped onto the porch, rifle held loosely but ready. "You found it. State your business." Cole pushed his hat back, and Rachel saw a face weathered by sun and wind, somewhere in his middle 20s, with dark hair and darker eyes that held something honest in them. "I worked with your father some years back before he passed, helped him drive cattle up to Kansas. He was a good man, and he talked about his daughters often enough that I felt I knew you both. I was passing through and thought I would pay my respects." "You picked a hell of a time," Rachel said, and her voice cracked despite her best efforts. "My sister is dying." Cole dismounted immediately, wrapping his reins around the porch rail. "What happened?" "Infected wound. She needs a doctor, needs medicine I do not have. The real doctor is in Abilene, and I have no way to get there and back in time." Rachel hated the way her voice sounded, desperate and small, but she was past the point of pride. Cole looked at her for a long moment, then at the house, then back at her. "Abilene is 30 miles north. I know where Abilene is. I have a good horse. I can make it there and back by tomorrow morning if I ride through the night." Rachel stared at him. "You do not even know us. You do not owe us anything. Your father once pulled me out of a river when my horse threw me and I hit my head on a rock. I was unconscious, would have drowned if he had not been there. He never asked for thanks, never expected anything in return. That is the kind of man he was." Cole was already checking his saddle, tightening the cinch. "I figure helping his daughters is the least I can do. Besides, no one deserves to die from an infected wound when medicine exists that could save them." "I have no money to pay you or to pay for medicine," Rachel said, the words bitter in her mouth. Cole swung back into the saddle. "I have money. Your father's life was worth more than whatever a bottle of medicine costs. Tell me what I am looking for." Rachel described Sarah's symptoms in detail, the red streaks, the fever, the way the wound wept despite being cleaned. Cole listened carefully, committing every word to memory. When she finished, he nodded once. "I will find what she needs. Keep her cool as you can, make her drink water even if she fights you. I will be back as fast as this horse can carry me." "Why are you doing this?" Rachel asked, but Cole was already turning his horse north. "Because it is the right thing to do," he called back. And then he was gone, his horse's hooves throwing up dust as he pushed into a gallop that would eat up the miles between here and Abilene. Rachel stood on the porch long after he disappeared from sight, feeling something shift in her chest that was not quite hope, but was close enough to keep her moving. She went back inside, back to Sarah's bedside, and began the work of keeping her sister alive long enough for a stranger to save her. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. Rachel bathed Sarah's burning skin with cool water from the well, spooned broth between her cracked lips, and talked to her about everything and nothing. She reminded Sarah of the summer they had caught fireflies in jars, of the time they had stolen a pie from the neighbor's window and been sick for days after eating the whole thing. She told her about the cowboy who had ridden north to save her life, about the way he had not hesitated, had not asked for anything in return. "You would like him," Rachel said, though Sarah could not hear. "He has kind eyes." The sun set, painting the sky the color of a fresh bruise, and still Sarah burned with fever. Rachel lit the lamps and continued her vigil, refusing to let herself think about what would happen if Cole did not return in time, or did not return at all. She had known the man for all of 10 minutes, had no reason to trust him beyond a story about her father and a river, but something in his face had told her he was the kind of man who kept his promises. Night deepened, and the coyotes began their singing. Rachel dozed in her chair, jerking awake every time Sarah stirred or cried out. The red streaks had climbed higher up her sister's leg, and the wound itself looked angry and swollen despite Rachel's constant care. She changed the bandage again, her hands steady even though her heart was breaking, and prayed to a God she was not sure was listening. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, when the darkness was at its deepest and hope at its lowest ebb, Rachel heard hoofbeats again. She ran to the door, her heart hammering, and saw Cole riding into the yard on a horse that was lathered with sweat and blowing hard. He practically fell out of the saddle, stumbling with exhaustion but clutching a leather satchel to his chest. "I got it," he said, his voice rough from dust and fatigue. "The doctor in Abilene gave me everything she needs." Rachel grabbed his arm, pulling him into the house. Cole moved to Sarah's bedside, his cowboy hands surprisingly gentle as he opened the satchel and began removing bottles and packets. "The doctor said to clean the wound with this first," he explained, holding up a brown bottle. "It will hurt like hell, but it will kill the infection. Then we pack it with this powder and wrap it clean. She gets a spoonful of this tonic every 4 hours until the fever breaks." "You talked to the doctor yourself?" Rachel asked, already moving to help him. "I was not about to trust this to guesswork. I woke him up, told him everything you told me, and made him walk me through exactly what to do. He wanted to come himself, but he had a woman in labor who could not be left. He is a good man. He did not charge me for the medicine when I told him the situation." Together, they worked to clean and dress Sarah's wound. Cole had been right about the pain. Even in her fevered state, Sarah screamed when the medicine hit the infection, her body arching off the bed. Rachel held her down, tears streaming down her face while Cole worked with steady efficiency. When it was done, they got the first dose of tonic down Sarah's throat, and then there was nothing to do but wait. Cole collapsed into a chair, his face gray with exhaustion. "The doctor said the fever should start to break within 12 hours if the medicine is going to work. If it does not—" He did not finish the sentence. "Thank you," Rachel said, the words inadequate for what he had done. "You rode 60 miles in less than 24 hours. You could have killed your horse, you could have killed yourself." Cole looked at her with those dark eyes, and Rachel saw something there that made her breath catch. "I told you, it was the right thing to do, besides I made a promise." "Stay," Rachel said impulsively. "Please." You need to rest, and your horse needs care. We do not have much, but we have a barn and food and a place to sleep that is not a saddle." Cole nodded slowly. "I would appreciate that. My horse is about done in, and truthfully, so am I." Rachel helped him to the barn, showed him where he could bed down his horse and where he could sleep himself. But Cole, despite his exhaustion, helped her rub down his gelding first, checking the animal's legs and hooves with the careful attention of a man who understood that his horse was more than transportation. It was a partner. The gelding was a fine animal, deep-chested and long-legged, the kind of horse that cost more money than Rachel had seen in years. "What is his name?" she asked as they worked. "Ranger. I raised him from a colt." Cole ran a hand down the horse's neck with obvious affection. "He has more heart than any 3 horses I have known. He gave me everything he had tonight." When Ranger was cared for and munching hay in a stall next to old Bessie, Rachel brought Cole a plate of cold cornbread and beans, an apology for a meal but all she had to offer. Cole ate like a starving man, and Rachel realized he probably had not stopped for food during his desperate ride. "Come inside," she said when he finished. "Sleep on the floor by the fire. It is more comfortable than the barn, and I would feel better having help if Sarah takes a turn." Cole followed her back to the house, moving like a man in a dream. Rachel gave him a blanket and a pillow, and he was asleep on the floor almost before his head touched down. Rachel returned to her vigil by Sarah's bedside, but now there was medicine in her sister's veins and a skilled cowboy sleeping in her house, and the hope that had been dying began to flicker back to life. The fever broke just as dawn painted the eastern sky pink and gold. Sarah's skin, which had been burning to the touch for 2 days, suddenly cooled, and her breathing, which had been shallow and rapid, deepened into the steady rhythm of real sleep. Rachel sobbed with relief, her head dropping to the mattress beside her sister's hip, and she did not hear Cole wake, did not know he was standing behind her until his hand came to rest gently on her shoulder. "She is going to be all right," Rachel said, looking up at him through tears. The fever broke. Cole's face transformed with a smile that made him look younger, less worn by the world. "Thank God. The doctor said that was the sign. If the fever breaks, the medicine is working." Sarah slept through the morning and into the afternoon, and when she finally woke, her eyes were clear for the first time in days. "Rachel," she whispered, her voice weak but rational. "What happened? I remember fever and pain, but everything else is confused." "You had an infection," Rachel explained, helping her sister drink cool water. "You nearly died. But a man named Cole Brennan, who knew Father, rode 30 miles to Abilene to bring back medicine. He saved your life." Sarah turned her head to where Cole stood awkwardly by the door, trying not to intrude on the sisters' reunion. "Thank you," she said simply. "I do not know how to repay such a debt." "No debt," Cole said firmly. "I am just glad I was passing by when I was needed." Over the next few days, Sarah continued to improve. The infection receded, the red streaks fading from her leg, and though she was weak, she was able to sit up, to eat solid food, to smile and laugh at Rachel's stories. Cole stayed on, helping with the heavy work around the homestead that had been piling up during Sarah's illness. He repaired the fence that had been falling down, fixed the loose boards on the barn, and helped Rachel bring in water from the well. He worked from sunrise to sunset, never complaining, never asking for anything in return, and Rachel found herself watching him more than she should. There was something about the way Cole moved, efficient and purposeful, that spoke of a man who had worked hard all his life. He had a quiet strength that made Rachel feel safe in a way she had not felt since her father died. And when he smiled, which was not often but was becoming more frequent, it lit up his entire face and made something warm bloom in Rachel's chest. On the 4th night after Cole's return from Abilene, Rachel brought coffee out to the porch where he sat watching the stars. Sarah was sleeping peacefully inside, her recovery progressing better than Rachel had dared hope. Rachel handed Cole a tin cup and sat down beside him, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body in the cooling night air. "You have done so much for us," Rachel said. "More than we could ever repay. Why have you stayed? Sarah is clearly recovering. You could have left days ago." Cole was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee. "I stayed because I wanted to," he finally said. "Because riding away felt wrong. Because every morning I wake up and think about leaving, and then I see you and the thought disappears." Rachel's heart began to beat faster. "Cole, I know I have no right," he continued, his voice low. "I know we barely know each other, but I cannot stop thinking about you, Rachel. I have been on my own for a long time, drifting from job to job, town to town, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots. But being here, being with you, it feels like something I did not know I was looking for." Rachel set her coffee down with shaking hands. "I feel it too. I thought I was imagining it, or that it was just gratitude for what you did for Sarah. But it is more than that. When I look at you, I feel something I have not felt since before Father died. I feel like maybe the future does not have to be just survival. Maybe it could be something more." Cole turned to face her, and in the starlight his eyes were very dark and very serious. "I do not have much to offer. I have some money saved, and I am good with horses and cattle. I can work hard, and I will never let you or Sarah want for anything if it is in my power to provide it. But I am just a cowboy, Rachel. I do not own land or have a fancy name. If you want someone with more prospects—" Rachel stopped him by placing her hand over his. "I do not want prospects. I want a good man who rides through the night to save someone he has never met. I want someone who works without being asked and who treats his horse like a friend. I want you, Cole Brennan, if you want me." Cole's hand turned under hers, his fingers lacing through hers with a gentleness that made her throat tight. "I want you more than I have ever wanted anything," he said, and then he was kissing her, soft and careful at first, then deeper as Rachel leaned into him. He tasted like coffee and dust and something essentially male that made her head spin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said, the words barely a whisper. "I know it is fast, I know we should wait, but I am 30 miles from anywhere, sitting on a porch with the woman I love, and I cannot think of a single reason to wait for what we both know is right." "Yes," Rachel said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you. But you have to ask Sarah for her blessing. This is her home too, and I will not make decisions that affect her without including her." They went inside together, waking Sarah gently. She listened to Cole's halting proposal, watched the way he held Rachel's hand like it was something precious, and smiled. "Of course you have my blessing," she said. "Rachel has been alone too long, taking care of me, taking care of this place. She deserves happiness. And you, Cole Brennan, have proven yourself to be exactly the kind of man she deserves. But I have one condition." "Name it," Cole said immediately. "You promise to always take care of her the way you took care of me. You ride through the night if she needs you. You never give up on her, no matter how hard things get. You love her the way Father loved Mother with everything you have." Cole's eyes were suspiciously bright. "I swear it on my life, I will never leave her, never stop fighting for her, never stop loving her." Sarah nodded, satisfied. "Then you have my blessing and my gratitude, and my hope that you too will be as happy as any two people have a right to be." They were married 3 weeks later in Dry Creek, with Sarah standing beside Rachel despite still being weak from her ordeal. The whole town turned out, curious about the mysterious cowboy who had ridden through the night to save a dying woman and then stolen her sister's heart. The ceremony was simple, performed by a circuit preacher who happened to be passing through. But when Cole slipped a simple gold band onto Rachel's finger, it felt like the most important moment of her life. "I love you," she whispered as they stood before God and man and promised themselves to each other. "I will love you until the day I die. And I will love you beyond that," Cole whispered back. "In whatever comes after, I will find you and love you still." They held a small reception at the homestead, with neighbors bringing food and drink and music. Cole danced with Rachel in the yard under the stars, holding her close while someone played a fiddle and someone else called out steps. He was not a graceful dancer, all cowboy boots and calloused hands, but Rachel thought he was perfect. When the last guests finally left and Sarah retired to her room with a knowing smile, Cole carried Rachel across the threshold of the bedroom that would now be theirs, laying her gently on the bed. "Are you sure?" he asked, even though they were married, even though she was his wife now. "We can wait if you are not ready." Rachel pulled him down to her, showing him with her kiss exactly how ready she was. They made love slowly, learning each other's bodies with a tenderness that brought tears to Rachel's eyes. Cole was careful with her, attentive to her needs, and when it was over, they lay tangled together in the darkness, hearts beating in rhythm. "I never thought I would have this," Rachel said, her head on Cole's chest. "After Father died and it was just Sarah and me, I thought my life would be work and worry until I was old. I never imagined someone like you." Cole's arms tightened around her. "I never thought I would have it either. I figured I would die alone somewhere, maybe get shot by rustlers or kicked by a horse. I never let myself imagine a wife, a home, a future. But now I cannot imagine anything else. You are my home, Rachel. Wherever you are, that is where I belong." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, and when morning came, Rachel woke to find Cole already up and dressed, standing at the window watching the sunrise. She went to him, sliding her arms around his waist from behind, and he covered her hands with his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "I am thinking that I need to find steady work. The money I have saved will last us a while, but not forever. I need to provide for you and Sarah, need to make sure you never have to worry about losing this place or going hungry." Rachel had been thinking about the same thing. The homestead barely supported 2 people, and now there were 3. They needed income, needed a plan for the future. "What about ranching?" she suggested. "You said you are good with horses and cattle. What if we tried to build up a small herd, maybe breed horses?" "Bessie is too old, but if we could get a few good mares and your ranger as a stud, we could sell colts." Cole turned to face her, excitement lighting his features. "That could work. It would take time and money to get started, but I know people who might help. I still have contacts from the cattle drives I used to work. If we could get a few head of good breeding stock, build up slowly, we could make a real go of it." They spent the next few weeks planning, calculating costs and writing letters to people Cole knew in the cattle business. Sarah, growing stronger every day, proved to have a head for figures and helped them work out what they could afford. The 3 of them became a team, each contributing their skills, and Rachel felt something she had not felt in years: excitement about the future. Cole rode to Abilene again, this time to meet with a cattle broker he knew from his driving days. He returned with a deal that made Rachel's head spin. The broker was willing to sell them 10 head of good breeding cattle and 3 quality mares on credit, with the understanding that Cole would help with a drive north to Kansas the following spring. It meant Cole would be gone for 3 months, but it also meant they would have the start of a real ranch. "I do not want to leave you," Cole said the night he told Rachel about the offer. "Not for 3 months. We have barely been married 2 months, and the thought of being away from you that long makes me ache. But this could be our future, Rachel. This could be the thing that makes us secure." Rachel understood the weight of his decision. "You have to go. We need this opportunity. Sarah and I will be fine. She is almost back to full strength, and we can manage the place while you are gone. It will be hard, but we can do hard things. We have proven that." The cattle and horses arrived in late October, and Cole threw himself into the work of setting up their new operation. He built new fencing, improved the barn, and spent hours training the horses and handling the cattle. Rachel and Sarah worked alongside him, learning everything they could about animal husbandry and ranch management. It was exhausting work, but it was also thrilling, watching their dream slowly take shape. In December, Rachel realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but she waited until she was certain before telling Cole. They were in the barn, checking on a mare who was close to foaling, when Rachel took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby," she said simply. "Sometime next summer." Cole froze, his hand warm against her through her dress. "A baby," he repeated, his voice full of wonder. "Rachel, are you sure?" "I am sure. I have all the signs Mother told me to watch for. By the time you get back from the cattle drive, I will be showing." Cole swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "We are having a baby," he said again, as if he could not quite believe it. "I am going to be a father." "You are going to be a wonderful father," Rachel said when he finally set her down. "I have seen you with the animals, so patient and gentle. You will be the same with our child." Cole's hand returned to her stomach, protective and possessive. "I almost do not want to leave now. What if you need me? What if something happens?" "Nothing will happen," Rachel assured him, though she shared his fear. "Sarah will be here, and the neighbor women will help if there is trouble. Besides, women have been having babies for thousands of years without their husbands hovering. I will be fine, and when you come home, you will meet your son or daughter." The winter passed quickly, full of work and preparation. Cole built a cradle in the evenings, his hands shaping the wood with the same care he showed everything he did. Rachel and Sarah sewed tiny clothes and knitted blankets, their needles flashing in the firelight while Cole read aloud from one of the few books they owned. It was a peaceful time, a happy time, and Rachel stored up every moment like treasure, knowing the spring would bring separation. Cole left in March with a crew of cowboys heading north with 2,000 head of cattle. Rachel stood in the yard watching him ride away, one hand on her swelling belly, the other shading her eyes against the morning sun. Cole turned in his saddle 3 times to look back at her, and the 3rd time he raised his hand in a wave that felt like a promise. Rachel waved back, tears streaming down her face, and then he was gone, swallowed by the dust and distance. The months that followed were the longest of Rachel's life. She worked the ranch with Sarah, tending the cattle and horses, keeping everything running smoothly, but every night she fell into bed exhausted and lonely, aching for Cole's presence beside her. She wrote him letters even though she had no way to send them, pouring out her thoughts and fears and hopes onto paper. She told him about the baby's first kicks, about the way her body was changing, about how much she missed him. In late June, when the heat was oppressive and Rachel was huge with pregnancy, feeling like she might split apart at any moment, Sarah spotted a rider approaching. Rachel's heart leaped, but it was not Cole, just a cowboy she did not recognize. He delivered a letter, one of the few Cole had been able to send during the drive, and Rachel tore it open with shaking hands. "My dearest Rachel," the letter read in Cole's careful script. "We are 2 weeks from Abilene, and then I will be coming home to you as fast as Ranger can carry me. I think of you every moment, imagine your beautiful face, wonder if our child has arrived yet, or if I will be lucky enough to be there when he or she comes into the world. Know that I love you more than words can say, and that every mile we travel north is 1 mile closer to turning south and coming home to you. Wait for me, my love. I will be there soon. Forever yours, Cole." Rachel pressed the letter to her chest, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "He is coming home," she told Sarah. "He will be here soon." But soon turned out to be relative. 3 days after the letter arrived, Rachel's water broke in the middle of the night. Sarah sent for the neighbor women, experienced mothers who knew what to do, and Rachel labored through the long hours of darkness and into the dawn. It was harder than she had imagined, more painful, more terrifying, but she gritted her teeth and pushed when they told her to push, breathed when they told her to breathe. And finally, as the sun broke over the horizon, she heard the sound she had been waiting for, her baby's first cry. "It is a boy," one of the women announced, placing the squalling infant on Rachel's chest. "A big, healthy boy." Rachel looked down at her son, at his red face and waving fists, and fell completely in love. He had dark hair like Cole, and when he briefly opened his eyes, they were dark too. "Hello, little one," she whispered, touching his tiny fingers. Your father is going to be so happy to meet you." They named him James after Rachel's father, and for the next 2 weeks, Rachel existed in a haze of exhaustion and joy. The baby nursed constantly, slept fitfully, and cried at odd hours, but Rachel did not care. Every time she looked at his perfect little face, she saw Cole there, and it made the loneliness more bearable. Cole arrived home on a scorching afternoon in mid-July, his horse lathered and blowing, his clothes covered in trail dust. Rachel was on the porch nursing James when she heard the hoofbeats, and she looked up to see her husband riding into the yard like he had that first day, like a hero from a story. Cole barely waited for Ranger to stop before he was out of the saddle and running to the porch. "Rachel," he breathed, his eyes taking in everything, her, the baby at her breast, the reality of what they had created together. "Oh God, Rachel, is that—" "Meet your son," Rachel said, her voice thick with emotion. "James Cole Brennan. He was born 2 weeks ago, and he has been waiting to meet his father." Cole dropped to his knees beside her chair, his hands hovering uncertainly before gently touching James's head. "He is so small," Cole said wonderingly, "so perfect. Rachel, we made this. This is ours." "He looks like you," Rachel said, watching her husband fall in love with their child. "He has your hair, your eyes. Sarah says he has your stubborn chin too." Cole laughed, the sound choked with tears. "Can I hold him?" Rachel carefully transferred the baby to Cole's arms, showing him how to support the head, how to cradle him close. Cole held his son like he was made of glass, staring down at him with such wonder and love that Rachel had to look away, overwhelmed. This was what she had dreamed of during the long, lonely months, this moment right here, her family together at last. "I am sorry I was not here when he was born," Cole said, his eyes never leaving James's face. "I tried to get back as fast as I could, pushed the cattle as hard as the boss would allow, but I was still too late." "You are here now," Rachel said firmly. "That is what matters. And you brought us a future, Cole. The money from the drive, the contacts you made, that is what will keep James fed and clothed and safe. You did what you needed to do." That night, after Sarah had gone to bed and James was sleeping in his cradle, Cole and Rachel lay together in the darkness, talking in whispers. Cole told her about the drive, about the river crossings and stampedes and long, dusty days in the saddle. Rachel told him about the pregnancy, the birth, the first 2 weeks of James's life. They caught up on 3 months of separation, bridging the gap with words and touches, and then they made love carefully, slowly, relearning each other after so long apart. "I am never leaving again," Cole said afterward, holding Rachel close. "I do not care what opportunities come up, what drives need cowboys. My place is here with you and James. This is my life now. Our life," Rachel corrected, kissing his shoulder. "And it is a good one, Cole. We have a home, a son, a future. We have everything that matters." The years that followed proved her right. The ranch grew slowly but steadily. The cattle multiplied, the horses gained a reputation for quality, and Cole's skill as a horseman brought buyers from as far away as Kansas. They hired help when they needed it, built additions to the house as their family grew, and became pillars of the Dry Creek community. Sarah met a widower from town, a quiet man who owned the general store, and married him when James was 2. She moved to town but visited often, and the bond between the sisters remained strong. Rachel and Cole had 2 more children, a daughter they named Anna after Rachel's mother, and another son they called William. The house was full of noise and laughter, of children running wild and horses nickering in the barn. Cole proved to be exactly the father Rachel had known he would be, patient and firm, teaching his children to ride almost before they could walk, showing them how to care for animals and land with respect. On their 10th anniversary, Cole took Rachel riding out to a spot on their property where a natural spring created a small oasis of green in the brown landscape. They left the children with Sarah for the afternoon, stealing a few hours alone the way they rarely could anymore. They sat together by the water, hands clasped, watching the sun move across the sky. "Do you remember the night we met?" Rachel asked. "You rode in here looking for the Whitmore place, and I was standing on the porch with a rifle, scared and desperate. I remember thinking you were the prettiest thing I had ever seen, even scared and desperate," Cole said. "And I remember thinking I would do anything to make that fear go away." "You rode 30 miles through dust to bring Sarah medicine," Rachel said, the story one they had told their children many times. "You never once thought about leaving, about saying it was too far or too hard. You just went." Cole turned to face her, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "How could I have left? Your father saved my life once. The least I could do was try to save his daughters, and then I saw you and everything changed. I went to Abilene for Sarah, but I stayed for you. I have stayed for you every day since." "I love you," Rachel said, the words as true now as they had been 10 years ago. "I love you for riding through the night, for staying, for building this life with me. I love you for being exactly who you are." "And I love you for seeing something worth staying for," Cole replied. "You saved me, Rachel, just as much as I saved Sarah. Before you, I was just drifting, going where the wind blew me. You gave me purpose, gave me a reason to put down roots. You gave me everything." They kissed there by the spring, husband and wife, partners in all things. And when they rode back to the house as the sun was setting, it was to find their children playing in the yard and smoke rising from the chimney where Sarah had started supper. It was ordinary and perfect, a life built from one act of kindness and the love that grew from it. The years continued their steady march. James grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with the same quiet confidence and skill with horses. Anna was bright and quick, with her mother's determination and her father's gentle heart. William was the wild one, always getting into trouble, always needing to be rescued from some scrape or another, but he had a laugh that could light up a room and a loyalty to his family that was absolute. When James turned 18, he announced his intention to start his own ranch, to take everything Cole had taught him and build something of his own. Cole gave him a dozen head of cattle, 2 good horses, and his blessing, though Rachel saw the pride and sadness warring in her husband's eyes as they watched their son ride off to claim his own piece of Texas. "That is how it is supposed to be," Cole said, his arm around Rachel's waist as they stood in the yard. "We raise them to be strong and independent to make their own way, but it does not make it easier to watch them go." "He will be fine," Rachel said, though her own eyes were wet. "You taught him well. He knows how to work hard, how to treat people fairly, how to never give up. He has everything he needs." Anna married a young lawyer from Abilene when she was 20, and though Rachel worried about her daughter moving to the city, Cole reminded her that they had raised their children to make their own choices. William stayed on the ranch, declaring he had no interest in leaving, that this land was in his blood and he would be happy to work it his whole life. When Cole turned 50, he finally started to slow down, though he would never admit it. His hands were gnarled from years of hard work. His back sometimes troubled him, and the gray in his hair had overtaken the dark. But when he looked at Rachel, his eyes held the same love and wonder they had held 30 years ago when he had ridden through the night to save her sister. They sat on the porch most evenings now, watching the sunset, talking about their children and grandchildren, about the ranch and the years behind them. Sometimes they were silent, content to simply be together, hands clasped, hearts beating in rhythm just as they had since the beginning. "Do you ever regret it?" Rachel asked one evening, the question coming from nowhere. "Stopping here that day, riding to Abilene, giving up your drifting life for this?" Cole looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Regret you, regret this life, our children, everything we built together." "Rachel, stopping here was the best thing I ever did. Riding to Abilene was the easiest decision I ever made, and giving up drifting was not giving up anything, it was gaining everything. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Even the hard parts," Rachel pressed. "The years when money was tight, when the cattle got sick, when William broke his arm falling from that tree, especially the hard parts," Cole said firmly. Because we got through them together. That is what marriage is, Rachel. It is not just the good times. It is standing together when things are hard, working through problems, never giving up on each other. You are my partner, my best friend, my whole heart. Nothing about this life has been a regret. Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. I am so grateful, she said softly. Grateful that you rode in here that day, grateful that you stayed, grateful for every moment we have had together. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Cole Brennan. No, Cole said, kissing the top of her head. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Everything good in my life came from you. They sat like that until the stars came out. Two people who had started as strangers and become soulmates, who had built a life from dust and determination and love. Inside the house, William was reading by the fire, and in Abilene, Anna was putting her own children to bed. And on his small ranch, James was doing evening chores just as his father had taught him. The legacy Cole and Rachel had built together was spreading, touching more lives, creating more stories. But for now, on this porch, on this evening, it was just the two of them, hands clasped, hearts full, grateful beyond measure for a gunshot wound, a fever, and a cowboy who rode 30 miles through dust and never once thought about leaving. The years turned gently after that, bringing the peace that comes from a life well lived. Cole and Rachel celebrated 50 years of marriage surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, a sprawling family that had all come from one act of desperation and kindness. They told the story often, how they had met, how Cole had ridden through the night, how love had grown from the dust and difficulty of West Texas. Sarah, who had lived a good long life herself, passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 73, her hand held by Rachel on one side and her husband on the other. At her funeral, Rachel stood by the grave and thanked her sister silently for almost dying that hot August day, because without Sarah's illness, Cole would have ridden right past their homestead, and Rachel would never have known the greatest love of her life. When Cole's time came, he went the way he had lived, quietly, without fuss, simply closing his eyes one night and not opening them again. Rachel, lying beside him, felt the moment his breath stopped, and though her heart broke into 1,000 pieces, she also felt gratitude. He had not suffered, had not wasted away in pain. He had simply loved her until his last breath, and that was the most precious gift he could have given her. She lived another 5 years without him, surrounded by family, tended by her children and grandchildren with the same care and devotion she had always shown them. She spent her days on the porch Cole had built, looking out at the land they had made productive together, remembering a young cowboy on a tired horse who had appeared like an answer to a prayer. When Rachel's own time came, she went peacefully, whispering Cole's name with her last breath. Her children laid her to rest beside him under a spreading oak tree on their property, the headstone simple but bearing the words that mattered. Beloved husband and father. Beloved wife and mother, together always. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, passed down from William to his children to his grandchildren, each one adding their own story to the land, but never forgetting the original tale. The story of the cowboy who rode 30 miles through dust to bring medicine to a dying woman who fell in love with her sister, who stayed and built a life and a legacy that outlasted them both. Because that is what love does. It endures. It grows. It creates something lasting from moments of choice and courage and commitment. Cole could have ridden past the Whitmore homestead that day. He could have declined to help, could have left after delivering the medicine, could have drifted away as he had always done before. But he stayed. He chose Rachel, chose family, chose to build rather than wander. And from that choice came everything. A marriage that lasted 52 years, children and grandchildren beyond counting, a ranch that prospered and endured, and a love story that was told and retold until it became legend in Dry Creek, Texas. The kind of story that reminded people what love really meant, what commitment looked like, what it meant to never give up on the people who mattered. Years after Rachel's death, James, now an old man himself, stood on the porch of the original homestead with his own great-grandchildren and told them the story one more time. He showed them the barn Cole had built, the spring where their great-grandparents had celebrated their 10th anniversary, the tree where they were buried. He told them about the fever, the desperate ride, the medicine that saved Sarah's life and led to Rachel and Cole's meeting. "The thing you have to understand," James told the wide-eyed children, "is that my father did not have to help. He did not owe our family anything beyond the debt he felt he owed my grandfather. He could have done the bare minimum, could have left after delivering the medicine. But that was not who he was. When he saw someone needed help, he helped. When he made a promise, he kept it. When he loved someone, he loved them with everything he had. That is the legacy he left us, not just this ranch, but that example. That is what I want you to remember." The children nodded solemnly, storing away the story the way children do, adding it to the collection of family tales that would shape who they became. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, Cole and Rachel smiled, knowing that their story continued, that the love they had built still mattered, still inspired, still endured. Because some love stories are just too big to be contained in a single lifetime. Some love stories echo through generations, shaping the future, reminding people of what is possible when courage meets compassion, when two hearts recognize each other across the distance of circumstance. Cole rode 30 miles through dust to bring medicine to a stranger. He stayed because of Rachel. And in staying, he created something that would outlast them both. A love that conquered loneliness, a family that grew from courage, and a legacy that proved that the simplest acts of kindness can change everything. That was their story. That was their truth. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything.